Hey everyone, and welcome back to another episode of My Daily Commute, Coronavirus Edition. If you've looked around my channel, you'll know that I like to travel a lot, and just being here at home all day was really making me reminisce and miss the days when I used to travel. So I actually did a lot of traveling during my second year of medical school, and I just wanted to share some of the, travel hacks that I found that were very useful for me when trying to travel as a medical student. So just really a couple things here. I think the first thing that I wanted to go over is how you can afford traveling while you're in medical school. Something that I found worked for me is picking up some really easy freelance contract gigs that you can pick up as your schedule allows, and that also fits within the realm of what you're already doing as a medical student. And a great example of that is tutoring or generating educational content. A lot of the subjects that you can tutor, you should already be an expert in those subjects as a medical student. So things like biology, biochemistry, organic chemistry, if you still remember that, Gen Chem. So a lot of those things should be pretty fresh, or you should be pretty knowledgeable about. So I think that's a great thing to do as a medical student. And you can look at things like tutor.com. I personally never used it. I've used Wyzant or Wizant, not sure how it's pronounced. And I found some gigs through that. So I think that's a great option to do. There's also companies out there that generate educational content for various clients, such as certain school systems or universities, textbook companies. And so I found a lot of success doing that. I actually took up a job to generate instructional videos for check.com. And that was actually a pretty good gig. They paid around, I think, $45 per video. And there was a point where I became very efficient at it. So I could generate videos in about 30 minutes to an hour worth of time. And that is a relatively short duration of time considering the amount of money that you're making. So the company that I worked for is called APAS. And the only thing to really keep in mind when you're working with a company like that is they don't pay you until the contract will actually close. So you have about 60 to 90 days from the close of contract until you received your check or your deposit in your bank account. So that's something to keep in mind. But really, I think the best way to afford traveling as a medical student is to do something that is not super time consuming and is in the realm of what you're already doing. It should just be second nature for you at that point. You can generate this content, make a lot of good money, and help out other people at the same time. So I think it's a win-win for everyone. So that's the first thing. So now the second thing that I want to talk about is how to manage your time or how to study while you're traveling. So what really worked for me is Anki. I was a huge, Zonki. I was a huge Zonki guy as a second year med student, and I think I pretty much did it throughout the year after my friend got me into it. And I made sure that while I was traveling that I kept up with my decks to the best of my ability. The thing is, when you're traveling, there's a lot of downtime where you're in the plane or you're going from location to location. In Costa Rica, there's a point where I had to take a boat to get from Arenal to Monteverde. So I made sure that even when I was on that boat, I was doing my cards, getting that sketchy in. Another example was when I was in Morocco, we were coming back from Morocco. We had a layover in Amsterdam. It was a really long trip on the way back. And I think on that flight back, I got through maybe 2,500 cards, an insanely high number of cards for me, which I'd really never done in, one sitting before. I think flashcards are a great way to keep up with your material while traveling. You can do it. You can sync Anki to your phone. It's also kind of fun to do, or at least it's more fun than other ways of studying, in my opinion. Because we're on the topic of Anki and flashcards, one thing I definitely recommend, especially since you'll be doing a lot of sitting in a plane in a very uncomfortable position, is finding a controller that's really comfortable for you. I used a PS4 controller and linking that to your computer so that when you're traveling, you can hold that controller and go through your cards like that. It was honestly a lifesaver when I was trying to travel and do my cards at the same time. So I think that is actually a pretty big factor in making sure that you're comfortable when you're studying in all these crazy positions and places that you might be in when traveling. So that's what I did as far as studying and making sure I was on top of things. 3, when you're booking your flights, if you're booking through Spirit or Frontier, I definitely recommend going to the airport. I've saved a lot of money by doing this. So typically when you book online through these airlines, they charge you an online transaction fee. It's about $20 per ticket. So at the minimum, you'll save $40 on your total round trip. But I've had instances where I've saved much more money. I was actually going to go hiking out west for spring break until that plan got canceled due to the pandemic situation. But the online ticket, I believe, was around maybe $300 for 2 people. I went ahead and booked it at the airport, and I got both tickets for the price of one. And I paid around $140 or $50 total. Now for the fourth thing, it's probably the one that you're wondering the most, is how do you find the time to travel? At my school, at least, I was allowed at least one excused absence per block. So I used that one up. You did take a hit to your overall grade if you took more absences. The way I looked at it was that I felt like this was something that I needed to do for my own mental health, especially because I knew that when I entered a PhD program, I would no longer be able to travel as much. So I made sure that I kept on top of all my stuff, did the best that I could on my exams. And then I did end up taking the hit here and there if I went over by a day or two. But I think the most important thing is just keeping on top of everything, make sure that you're studying throughout the year so that you can afford to take these little breaks throughout the year. So just to give you guys a little bit of information about me, I did travel a lot during my second year of medical school. For me, it was personally, the reason I decided to do that was because I felt like I really needed it for my mental health. Before I got married about 3 years ago, I actually had never been outside the country, and I realized that once I became a PhD program, the difference there is that you need to physically be in a lab to get your work done, to progress on your research. Whereas in medical school, you're still studying. Honestly, like for me, a lot of my learning was online. My lectures were not mandatory, and I did a lot of learning through Pathoma and Boards and Beyond, a lot of those other really good board resources. And I think it's really important that as medical students that we balance our lives, our hobbies, and our passions with our careers. For me personally, that meant that I get as much traveling done in that year span as possible, especially because I had this project called myoGLOBEn that I really wanted to do. And the idea there was to combine fitness and travel to highlight unique fitness opportunities around the world. And I knew that this would really be my only shot at doing it because I wouldn't be able to travel as much during my PhD. And so for those of you who are unfamiliar with that, you can check that out at my other YouTube channel. It's called myoGLOBEn. I'm currently in the middle of pushing out my first season of this web series. But the idea there is to highlight unique fitness opportunities, workouts, and fitness enthusiasts all around the world, so that you could go to these locations and, if you want to stay in shape, you could seek out those opportunities. So that's something that I knew that this year span would really be my only shot to go to these different places and film it, at least for a while. So yeah, I think it's really about making sure that you're balancing what you need to do as a medical student and taking the absolute best care of yourself. We're in this field, we're trying to promote health, but it's just as important that we take care of our own mental and physical well-being. But yeah, that's all I have for this episode. If you have any questions, like always, feel free to hit me up via my email, which should be in the description below, or you can always shoot me a message on Instagram or leave a comment below. But that's it for this episode. I hope you enjoyed, and I hope you'll tune in next time.